So I went to a kink play party all by myself a few weeks ago. And first video in this apartment with this setup because I'm definitely not filming this in a public warehouse. I figured the timing of this video is as perfect of a time as any, considering my OnlyFans is 50% off for December, so hey. But yeah, the topic of sex has been no stranger to this channel, although it hasn't been talked about that often. I've talked about my relationships and the sex life in them. I've talked about disabled people in general having a sex life, and that is a topic that I feel like just needs to be brought back up again, because there is still this weird stigma that disabled people aren't sexually desirable, aren't having sex, or shouldn't be having sex. A disabled friend of mine and his wife, who is also disabled, are currently pregnant. They're having a child, and the story's gone viral, and of course people have gone nuts and said some pretty ridiculous things. And I've seen other TikToks and stuff of disabled women being pregnant, having children, they're in wheelchairs, etc., and people are just like, why are these people having sex? Why are these people having children? So kink and stuff is already a bit of a taboo, or a lot of a taboo subject, and then if you add disabled people to the topic, it gets even more taboo, apparently. I mean, that's not shocking. This isn't exactly a grade school topic, is it? But still, anyhow. So when I had my book channel, which I still have up, but considering everything that's been going on in my life this second half of the year, I just haven't had enough time to properly sit down and read books and be able to talk about them outside of my Patreon. So we're just talking about that stuff here now. But I was reading a lot of spicy romance stuff, and some of that was the dark romance type, and I was making videos talking about how like subjects like CNC were just not handled well in some of the books that I was reading and whatever else. And like anybody else, there's things that I'm into, but you know, they've been brought up in past relationships and my one actual relationship and that I've had, but it never really got explored. And then in my last one, well, we don't talk about that disaster. And now, hey, finally living on my own after 3 decades of dealing with an abusive household and not being able to get out of it because of ableism in society, desires start coming up more and more and more. But the problem is, being able to make it happen is incredibly difficult. And I'm not just saying that because I live in Nebraska, although I live in Omaha, so, you know, it's probably the most progressive in the state. I'm just not lucky in that department. So what do I do? I watch videos and, you know, have all that time to myself, and I'm like, I would not mind seeing what this is about in person. And I have online friends who weren't into this stuff so much before, but now they've been transitioning into that BDSM lifestyle and talking about it. Cat Black, lover. And every time she would post something about it, and then I had friends that would post something about it, here's little old me like, okay, but now I want to be involved in this somehow, but I don't know how to make it happen. And thus, FetLife was a thing. It is a thing. It's always been a thing. It's been a thing for a very long time. And I never signed up for an account for it until recently, because hello, the job, or one of the jobs that I had now, hello, sex work. So why not? And I saw events. I clicked on them. I reserved or RSVP'd, but I never actually went, partially because they're in locations where I don't really want to fuss with the parking, especially now that it's getting really cold. But also, I was gonna have to go by myself. I didn't have a partner to experience these things with, and I didn't really have friends to experience these things with either, just platonically, just to like watch and see what the heck is up, right? Although I have friends that have been to these things before, but they're not going to them now. So what's a girl to do? So I've shown interest in the more innocent little ones like get-togethers, coffee meetups, and I thought maybe I should go to those first. You know, try to get some familiar faces in before I just jump right in, right? But I didn't end up going to those. You know what I did end up going to? A full-blown freaking play party, of which I'm not going to disclose. And I went by myself in the dark, because the sun now sets at freaking 5 in the afternoon, or the evening, and I almost chickened out. I was telling a friend of mine that I had a feeling she went to these things, but I didn't know until I told her, and she was like, well, which one are you going to? And I told her, and she got to tell me things that I could be prepared for. But of course she wasn't gonna go with me. And it's the day of the event. I'm freaking out. I don't know what to wear. I wore a little cropped hoodie and a little skirt and like a cute little set underneath. I didn't even know what I was going to do, if I wanted to get all, you know, dressed up and themed or whatever, because what am I gonna do with my clothes? Because I am not gonna leave a bag of stuff out in the wild for people to see and possibly sneak through. Like, I don't want to, you know, worry about somebody possibly trying to steal something. I don't know. Didn't want to be standing there awkwardly because I have no idea what to actually expect in person, even though I've read the pages of what to expect. My friends have told me what to expect. And I'm texting her before I'm on my way, and she's telling me not to chicken out because I was like so close to chickening out. But okay, I didn't chicken out. I made it to the parking lot, and she did tell me not to even bother going to the first like hour because obviously nothing's gonna happen. People are still gonna be getting set up and things like that. But I ended up going in because there was actually a girl who parked beside of me, and we were both kind of just chilling out in our cars for a minute, and then we finally got out. But once I saw that she was gonna get out, I started to get out. Possibly creepy, but I was terrified and didn't want to go by myself. And it worked out in the end because we found out that we were both brand new to this, and so we kind of just made friends with each other for the evening and just hung around each other and followed each other, at least until the last hour that I was there, and then we kind of just ventured off. I had to leave early, but it was getting a little bit boring by the end and my feet were hurting. It was a little bit awkward going in. The people were so nice. The host were so nice. You do have to sign a waiver, obviously, because it's a very personal, very private thing. You gotta sign some waivers, especially with some of the things that are going on. There was some medical stuff that was going on in there, which was, you would think somebody who Saw is one of my favorite horror franchises. I did not run from the sight of it like I thought I was going to. I actually stayed for the whole thing. Well, at first I was silly and thought, oh, somebody's getting a piercing. No, it was much more than that. And I stayed for the whole thing, start to finish. Didn't throw up or anything. I was very shocked. I don't know if I would want to sit through that again, but hey, proud of myself. And we got the little tour. There wasn't that much to tour. It was one big room and some crosses and some tables and other things were around, and the music. Not a deaf-friendly place, and my friend did warn me about that. I had flashbacks to VidCon after party nights where everything would be so loud. Granted, during the VidCon years, I didn't have hearing aids, so that was an experience, but it just kind of, you know, felt like that. People, you know, trying to make conversation, and some things I'm getting, some things I'm not. I had my hearing aids turned up quite loud, which honestly wasn't helping because that just made everything else more loud. My hearing aids were not connected to my new phone, so I couldn't even do speech and noise. I have to do all that. Did meet a couple of other new people besides the host. There was one guy who seemed friendly, and then there was, you know, a couple of other people just spread out. There were scenes that I was very intrigued by, the rope scenes, the impact scenes, and you know it's a bummer when you're interested in being involved with something but you can't because you have nobody to do that with. That was a bummer with the whole couple of hours that I was there. And you kind of can ask people if you can be involved, or you can ask the host if they can introduce you to somebody to get involved in that, but I was a little bit too shy and terrified to do all that. Part of me was wondering if I was going to be like, okay, this is very strange being with, you know, half the room of naked people and doing activities I never seen outside of like video and pictures and people I've subscribed to on OnlyFans and what the heck ever on Twitter and things. It really wasn't that awkward. Now there were some things that I saw that did make me feel a little bit awkward because it was a little bit more extreme than what I'm used to. But overall it was just like, okay, there's naked people. I don't know, is this a growing up in a half German household type of thing? Like, okay, naked people, whatever. And I think I stayed for about 3.5, almost 4 hours. It was very quiet for the first like 2 hours, and then things started to pick up. And then like the last 1.5 to 2 hours, my new friend there told me that it started to quiet down again. So it's like 9 to 10 or 8 to 10 is when really things start to happen and then it just fizzles out afterwards. So then back to the question, would I do this again? I am curious about the events that are closer to where I live. I mean, the one that I went to really wasn't that far, but a couple of the other ones are like very, very close. But again, the parking. The parking at night, in the dark, in winter. And I actually did message the host of those other events and asked about like getting personally involved in like scenes and stuff. And there was a possibility there. I just have to actually go in. And there's other like events that go around that are just like more casual. There's a freaking art day or art night. You know, you can just go in and just like color and make art with people, and that's like a more PG way of dipping your toes into this type of thing. If you don't want to go full swinging into a play party for your first time ever, I should do that. Because I have a bunch of coloring books now because your girl needed something to take her mind off of things now. More videos to come on that eventually, but yeah. So maybe I should, because I'm curious, and it'd be fun to talk more about my experience with that, especially because now that I mentioned that I wrote a post on Patreon about this, which if you want to go read that, you could support my work, and there's exclusive content there like this. And there's just so many more things to talk about when it comes to disabled people and sex and kink, BDSM, whoever, whatever. And this is, I feel like, maybe a nice intro to that. Just, hello, I did my first party, sort of. I walked around in the room for a couple of hours, but still. Would it be more fun to have somebody to go with? Yes. Because it does feel very awkward just standing around by yourself, and there were a lot of people that were just by themselves. There were a lot of new people, a lot more new people than I was expecting. And you know who's new because you get the little V sticker. But you knew who was new because they would have the little sticker, which is nice. Because then, you know, the more experienced people can come over and help you feel a little bit less awkward, because some people were definitely just standing around feeling awkward. And my new friend and I, you know, we were very happy to have each other, and we added each other on FetLife and whatever, and like, hey, you know, it's really nice to meet you, and I'm really glad that we had each other, so we weren't just, you know, in a corner the entire time. But yeah, interesting experience. Glad that I went, because it's been something that I've been interested in for almost 10 years now, and I remember bringing it up to an ex once, and we had kind of toyed around with the idea of going to one of these things, especially in Toronto of all places, but it just never happened. But now in frickin' Nebraska, here we are. So yeah, I'll let you know if I go to any future ones, and then we could talk about it. And then if you have any questions, you're welcome to leave them in the comments, or any like suggestions and topics of what to talk about with disabled people, sex, kink, whatever, because we need to talk about this more, and this is the interactive part. So go ahead, leave them down in the comments. And again, 50% off that particular website if you're interested, or again, Patreon, where there's lots of exclusive content, disability accessibility, anything and everything that I can think of, and movie stuff as well. Which I also recently did a movie review on Nora. Love that movie. Go check that out. Both the movie and the review. Subscribe if you haven't yet, especially for more of this stuff to come. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it, and I will see you later. Bye.